Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to our International Imposter Syndrome Awareness Day. We have a fantastic guest coming up now. Her name is Olga Zilberberg, and she's the founder of The Missing Link. And The Missing Link is an organization that's dedicated to disrupting the status quo in mental health and neurodiversity training solutions. And drawing from her personal experiences as a neurodivergent individual, Olga's committed to fostering that more inclusive world where every person is celebrated and supported to reach their full potential. And as I've talked about as well throughout the day, I myself am neurodivergent, so I've always been really interested in exploring that link between imposter syndrome and neurodiversity and those of us who are neurodivergent. So, welcome, Olga. It's an absolute honor to have you here today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
No problem. I'll kick off with the first question. And I was wondering if I could ask how you personally define imposter syndrome and how do you think it uniquely manifests in those of us who are neurodivergent compared to those who are neurotypical?
Yeah, that's such a good question. Imposter syndrome, when you think about it, is that belief that our capabilities and our ability to do things are not quite there. So we are very scared of being found a fraud, being found a failure, being found out that we don't know enough or we are not good enough. And that would be the definition, I would imagine, by everyone that suffers from imposter syndrome. And if you put a layer of neurodivergent minds with that definition, everything is blown then out of proportion in a way, because we already grow up in an environment in which we feel we are not good enough. We feel, we're this square
Yeah.
peg in the round hole, and we're just trying to squeeze ourselves in there and fit in and keep everything together. So we already have, as we grow up, all those interactions in which we feel I'm different. Why am I not capable or able to do and behave and smile and understand and communicate and be part of? So when suddenly you are confronted with situations in which you've got that layer, and then you look at how you interact with other people, you kind of go, phew, if you get it right, is this
Mm.
phew effect.
Yeah.
I managed to do it, but one day
Yeah.
they will find out that I am not quite that, you know, clever or creative or innovative, or I don't know enough. So it really brings about in us lots of anxiety. And that's when you put another layer then of mental health challenges, isn't it? All the
Yeah.
stress and all the anxiety, um, and panic around when will it happen? So I think we kind of go through all our lives thinking it's gonna happen, and I got lucky this time round. But when will it happen that someone will point out you don't know enough? What are you talking about? Or who do you think you are? And I think that is very scary. Yeah.
Absolutely. And as somebody that's neurodivergent myself, I absolutely resonate and relate to a lot of that, which brings me nicely into the next question because I am adept at masking depending on the situation that I'm in. And I'm always thinking about how I'm perceived by the situation I'm in or the person that I'm talking to. And I guess I have sort of different masks. So for the workplace or for family or for friends or so
Mm.
on. And many neurodivergent individuals do engage in masking. So, how do you think that masking contributes to imposter syndrome?
I that's brilliant what you said. All the different masks. Um, I think, like you say, we have got a repertoire of masks. So
Hmm.
it's as if you walk into a cupboard and there they are, all of them. Um, and you just use them as and when. So you're the way that you see yourself and your own identity is so tinted by those feelings of I'm an imposter. I don't know enough. I'm not good enough. Who do I think I am? So that mask is in there, and then you put another layer on top, which is depending on wherever you go, really. You pretend that on top of holding it all together and pretending that I know what I'm talking about, even though I know what I'm talking about, but you kind of go, gosh, I got to pretend I know what I'm
Yeah.
talking about. I got to pretend that I know what I'm doing. You put that other layer on top of that other mask on top. So if you think of that heaviness that comes with it, so masking takes away a sense of, it takes away identity. So you have to actually dig so much deeper to get to the core of your strengths when you struggle with this imposter syndrome. And on top of that, you've got another mask. So it's
Yeah.
kind of, I often say it's like Russian dolls. You've got imposter syndrome, and you're there, tiny win in there, and then you've got that imposter syndrome, and then you've got a mask for here and there and there and there. So what you present to others is not actually your own self. It's not actually you. It's a version of you that you think, we think they want to see. So we're always playing that kind of crystal ball
Hmm. Yeah.
game of how do I need to present myself in this situation? I'm feeling super wobbly. I'm feeling I'm not. I'm very lacking here, and I'm gonna see if I can wing it. And sometimes we talk about that. We say, I just got lucky, or someone might come and say, "Gosh, you've done really well," and we said, "Oh, gosh, anyone could have done it." So on top of that, we take away our our ability to recognize that we've done well, and that comes from that internalized ableism in
Yeah.
which we grow up thinking, I should be able to do this, I should be able to do that, I should be able to look normal, I should be able to behave normal. So on top of that, you kind of try to mind read. Um, and eventually, I don't know about you, but eventually for me, and when I've worked with people that struggle with imposter syndrome and the neurodivergent, oftentimes they say, I feel like I'm like a chameleon
Yeah.
and I'm
Abs
constantly changing. And
hmm.
I just don't know what color I am truly because I've changed so often that some of those colors from changing from one scenario to another, one situation to another, they've stayed with me, but they're not my true colors. I am not able to show my true colors because I feel like an imposter. I'm scared to be found a failure and a fraud. And on top of that, I'm having to hold it all together for society, expectations, others, you name it.
Absolutely.
Very
I
hard.
could not agree with that more. And I love that analogy of the chameleon there, the different colors, the different masks beings that we present to the world depending on the situation that we're in. And I think for me, using my own, an example for myself, imposter syndrome has always really manifested itself a lot more because I was always told when I was growing up, stand up straight, say this, don't say that, do this, do that. Why can't you be more like your cousin? Why can't you be more like this person? Why can't you be more like the other kids? And I had this overarching, I've got to please my parents before anything else, myself or anything. That was the overarching thing. And I became such a people pleaser
Hmm.
as a result. But at the same time, I was always feeling such a big fraud, being a neurodivergent person in a neurotypical world, which I wasn't diagnosed till quite late on in life. I was actually in my early 40s before I was diagnosed with autism and then ADHD, dyspraxia and dyscalculia a couple of years or so later. Um, do you think, Olga, that imposter syndrome is perhaps more of an internal struggle, or is it more of a response to external factors, such as workplace discrimination or those societal expectations that you mentioned?
Yeah, that you know what, thank you. That is such a brilliant question with regards to what you've just explained, and it kind of ties in so nicely. So, talking about the messages that we get
Mhm.
from our significant adults in our lives, right? And you get that at the same, just like you, I used to be told, I used to walk on tippy toes,
Mm.
always walk on tippy toes,
Yeah,
and I think many autistic individuals walk on tippy toes. And I used to be told, walk properly. Why can you not walk properly? Why are you always walking on tippy toes? You're gonna trip over. You're so clumsy. You're so like this and that and that. So the when we talk about imposter syndrome, if you think about always feeling a failure, always feeling a fraud, always feeling not being good enough and wanting to please, so people pleasing comes into place, wanting to please all those significant adults in our
mm,
lives. And you think about the inner critic, you kind of put the two together. And the way we grow up as human beings is that we take, so when we are born, we're not born, I always say to people, we're not born knowing or thinking that I'm better than you and I'm cleverer than you. We kind of grow and we are like a blank slate in a way. And then we start developing our self image and self concept from the messages, the external messages. So thinking about, is it external, is it internal process, that imposter syndrome. So you start receiving external messages. You're clumsy. Why are you dropping your orange juice? Why can you
mm,
not be the same as? And eventually you start internalizing those voices. So sometimes I might hear myself saying, "Oh, who do you think you are? You're only mediocre." And then I stop myself and I go, "Whose voice is this?" And that's my father's voice. And I go, "My father's voice. That's what I always heard." So we and we go through life actually feeling okay with ourselves. We are okay with who we are, but all those messages come in and we start internalizing. And then we start developing those self beliefs that I'm a fraud. I'm not the same as. I'm not as good as. Why can I not be the same? So eventually that becomes your inner narrative. And that self belief and that inner narrative goes with you everywhere. And it's like you've got a computer in a way with all different keys or buttons or whatever you want to call it.
yeah,
And we go out then as adults into the world, and someone comes and goes, "Oh, you're going to give a chat about X, Y, and Z." And that is the external trigger that is like someone is pushing an internal button in you and is triggering one of those negative beliefs and imposter beliefs about ourselves to, and then that rolls down the imposter syndrome and you start doubting yourself and you start thinking, "Oh my gosh, I'm gonna be found out. There's gonna be someone that is cleverer than me. There's gonna know more than me. They're gonna ask me a question and I don't know." And then we start isolating and we start procrastinating and we start not wanting to engage. So there is a lot of missed opportunities for personal growth and professional development and career development. And it's all part of internal, external. And it's that dance that you just go back and forth, in which, yeah, buttons get pressed and we tend to operate and we run the full program. It's not, it's like the when the your phone is updating, your computer is updating, and you've got to wait until the whole thing updates, and it might take a while. It's not like you can stop it halfway through. So when someone presses that button, that external trigger, we run through that full process of feeling, oh. I'm feeling so bad. And we spiral down. And we might get very anxious, very panicky, stressed, even low in mood. You know, what is this my life? Is this going to be my life? Why can I not be, you know, normal, we tend to say. Yeah.
Absolutely. And again, so much that I myself resonated with, especially around, all those voices, all those things that, we're told, as we're growing up by those significant adults in our lives and how we internalize them and how a lot of it comes, back out in those feelings of imposter syndrome
Yeah.
and contributes to missed opportunities, to things that we don't pursue or we think are not for us. Because we have those feelings that there are other people out there that are much better than us, that we don't deserve those opportunities, and we're a fraud, and we're going to be found out at any second. I can't tell you the amount of things that I would get so far in the process for, and then those voices would literally come into my head. And there have been so many things that I've just, backed away from and not done because I've always felt I can't do this. I have no right to do this, and I shouldn't be doing this because there are far more better people out there that are much better at me than this. And I've lost so many opportunities from it as a result. Not so much in recent years. I saw the film. I'm a huge fan of Queen and Freddie Mercury, and I saw the film Bohemian Rhapsody in 2018. And there was a line in that film called "Fortune favors the bold." And I don't know why, but that line really resonated with me, and I resolved to, not pull out of things, not say no. I mean, obviously boundaries are important, but when my first thought, if I got asked to write an article or speak at an event or something, was just to say, "Oh no, it's not for me." I actually started saying yes more. So, fortune favors the bold by doing it. And I've achieved and done so much more as a result. But you know what? Those voices
Yeah.
are still there in my head, even, despite that. So how do you think perhaps that biases and stereotypes about neurodiversity contribute to feelings of imposter syndrome?
Yeah, that's a really an interesting question because um, when you think about biases, nowadays we often talk about biases and we talk about being more accepting, but we all have those unconscious biases that are ingrained and part of maybe what we hear or misconceptions. So it would be comments like I tell you what I was in a doing an event. I was doing a chat in an event a couple of weeks ago, and I finished, and then I had people coming over to ask questions, and thank you, it was nice, and one of them came over and she said, "Oh, thank you. That was brilliant." I said, "I'm glad that it was useful." And it was a chat on neurodiversity awareness. And then she said, "I always thought autistic people don't make eye contact." And I kind of went, "Oh." And it might sound like it's nothing. It might sound like there is no malice in it. And there was no malice in the way that she put it across. But it's comments like that, or and she mentioned, she said, "You're very articulate," and I thought autistic people couldn't talk, um, and it kind of because I used to have a stutter when I was young, and I used to doubt myself very often, and I used to shy away from sharing. So just like you, just in the past few years, I've started to be a yes person to opportunities as opposed to shying away. So those biases, even though the person is not telling you in a way that they mean any harm or they mean any malice, it kind of triggers in you that self-belief that I'm gonna be found out. Now I've got to make eye contact. And then we might start switching the mask a little. And I remember I found myself kind of like intentionally making more eye contact. And then I thought, what are you doing? Because now you're staring intensely at people. Now they're going to make people feel uncomfortable. And it's all those biases and all the stereotyping that all of a sudden you kind of think, oh, I've gone back to being again a 5 year old
Yeah.
or a 7 year old or a 15 year old, whatever age it is. And I sometimes, so I said to her, I said, thank you. I'm glad that, whatever it was, that you found it interesting. But every autistic individual is different. And some autistic individuals are okay making eye contact. Some of them are not. Some of them are okay. They're very eloquent and some of them are not. And she went, oh, okay. Well, it's just all the ones that I know are the ones that rock and not don't talk. I just went, oh, she wasn't being mean or anything like that, but she was just explaining her own experiences. But that throws you back onto, gosh, I'm going to be found a fraud. I'm not good enough. I was just so lucky that I had such a nice audience instead of looking at the achievement of I've done this. It was very well received. I prepared for a long time. I prepared all these hours and I presented a really good topic. And we tend to kind of say, of course, it was a benevolent audience. It was a really good audience. So those little comments and those little stereotyping remarks can make us feel again small,
Yeah.
inadequate, not good enough. Um, and oftentimes it kind of spirals us onto perfectionism. And
Yeah.
we just go to the extreme of, I don't want those remarks ever again. And I'm gonna have to do this so perfect. And of course there is nothing like perfect. Because then you work and to the point of burning out, and then you burn out, and but you finally manage to get that product, whatever it is that you want to present, and all it takes is someone to come and say, oh, well, that was lovely, but whatever else it might be,
Yeah.
you talk too much or you talk too fast. Because in my case, I'm an autistic ADHD, so I tend to talk. And sometimes when I get very passionate, I talk very fast. So that comment then goes back again to a 12-year-old, you talk a lot, or a 15-year-old, you talk too fast. So all of those biases and stereotyping really have an impact on how we perceive ourselves and our sense of worth and value as well. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And for me, I find eye contact literally physically painful.
Yes.
I do it and I get around it by trying to look at an imaginary dot in the middle of somebody's forehead. So I'm always focused on that. And it then makes it look like I do have that eye contact.
Yeah.
But I actually find the whole process and actually looking at people in the eyes physically painful.
Yeah.
And it's something that I've always had, and I can still, hear those voices now, being told, look at me when I'm talking to you, and
Yeah.
and being told of, and actually being sent out of the classroom at school because I didn't look at the teacher when
Yeah.
she was talking to
Yeah.
me. So 100% and resonate with that as well. How do you think perhaps that neurodivergent individuals can learn to reframe their achievements and recognize their worth in the sea of, things that we speak about in our minds about imposter syndrome? Even if we feel that we don't belong.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so good that you asked that question because we talk about imposter syndrome. We talk about imposter syndrome. There is a higher percentage of individuals, females, struggling with imposter syndrome than males, as a matter of fact. So we talk about um, what can we do, and people oftentimes might say, "Well, you did very well, pat on the shoulder," but it has to come from internally. no matter what people tell us from the outside, that if we don't believe ourselves that we are okay, and that
Yeah.
I am of I'm good, I'm enough, and I am of worth and value to be in this world as much as the next person, or the person next to me. If it doesn't come from me, all I'm gonna hear is people saying, "Oh, you've done really well," and I'm gonna think they're just being nice, they're being kind, they just feel sorry for me, and that's why they say things like that. So we tend to do that, and to the way to turn that switch is to actually stop for a moment. And it's something we don't do because we haven't been told or shown to do. Stop for a moment and think of your achievements and pause and look back and compare yourself to yourself, not anyone else. And this is something that I learned a while back, but not that long back, from business coach that I had. And I was having one of those days in which I was just saying, "Oh gosh, business is not going the way I want it to go. I'm not able to do. Everyone is doing," because it was that compare and despair. And she said to me, "I see your whiteboard behind you. What do you have in there?" And I said, "Oh, I just put in there this and that and the other." And she said, "Well, what I want you to do is at the end of the day, every day, I want you to stop and I want you to put in there three things that you, and according to you and only you, consider that they are three achievements. And I want you to look at them, and I want you to pause for a moment, and I want you to internalize, look at what I've done." And I thought that is just
Yeah.
ridiculous. It took me, I'm not kidding, a couple of hours of pottering in my office and going in and out and grabbing the pen and looking at the blank space and just going, "Oh." And then eventually I put something in there, and it was just the one thing. And I met with her the following week, and she said, "Have you been doing it?" And I said, "Look, I've got just the one thing in there. This is just ridiculous. I'm not doing it." And she said, "Well, I want you to do it every day." It took me ages to come up with three, but I would say stop for a moment and look at what you've done. And according to you, have you done well? Have you done good? And celebrate that. And another thing that I then learned over time, because I started then thinking, "Oh, what else can I do?" was to get to an 80% of whatever I was doing. Instead of going all the way to 100, it was to go into an 80% of whatever I was doing, and then look at that and say, have I done well with this 80% according to my standards? Have I given my 150%? Have I done everything in my power to get this 80% good enough to be shown, to share with someone, for me to look at it? Are you
Yeah.
satisfied with it? And I started working on the 80% and celebrating that, yes, there is room for improvement, but I have done really well. And that creates that change in the internal beliefs that you start saying, "I can do." So all you're doing is building up your confidence and building up that sense of, "I am enough." Am I
Yeah.
perfect? No. Is there anyone perfect in the world? No. But am I enough for now? Yes, I'm enough for now.
Yeah.
And this is what it's going to be. And tomorrow we'll work on a little bit more. And the following day and the following day. But that is enough. And that is so important, to be able to say, "It's enough." Do I know everything? No. Can I go still and present that topic? Yes. Is there a chance that I'm going to know everything? No, but neither do any of the people in the audience will know everything. So it's okay not to know everything.
Absolutely.
So
Fantastic.
finding ways.
Um, we're almost running out of time for this discussion, and Olga, I could talk to you for hours and hours. But if we close off with one piece of advice that you would give to those of us who are neurodivergent, who are struggling with imposter syndrome, what would it be?
One piece of advice:
Mm,
celebrate yourself.
yeah,
Do take the time to celebrate you. Because I always say to people, there is only one Lisa in the world, and there is only one Olga in the world. and there is only one of every single one of us in the world, and we bring value. We might not know what value we bring because we've been buried under so many negative comments, but we enrich people's lives, and that's why we are on this world, because we enrich people's lives. So always celebrate you. The more you celebrate you, the more you're able to give out, and the less you become a chameleon because you're happier in your own skin. And we are just beautiful as we are. Why change?
Absolutely. And that is such a lovely message to end this discussion on. So celebrate you because there's only one of you and you're unique and you absolutely matter. And feelings of imposter syndrome and so on, they are normal, but they can be reframed
Yeah.
in a very different way. So, Olga, thank you so much for taking part in this year's International Imposter Syndrome Awareness Day. And do please, everybody, stay with us because we've got some other fantastic talks and conversations around imposter syndrome coming up over the rest of today. Thank
Thank you
you.
for having me. Thank you so much. Thank you.